Fast, deadly, and years ahead of their time, Germany's fighters ruled the skies. From the early blitzkrieg to the final desperate defense of the Reich, the Luftwaffe deployed some of the most advanced and fearsome aircraft of the Second World War. Today, we're diving deep into every single German fighter that saw combat, from the workhorses to the wonder weapons. Let us start with the undisputed icon, the Messerschmitt Bf 109. This aircraft was the backbone of the Luftwaffe's fighter force. When it first appeared, it was a revolution. With its all-metal monocoque construction, enclosed cockpit, and retractable landing gear, it outclassed nearly everything in the sky. The initial EMU variant, the Bf 109E, was the terror of the Battle of Britain. It was a superb dogfighter, especially in the vertical, thanks to its direct fuel injection Daimler-Benz engine that would uncut out in a negative G dive like the British Spitfire's carburetor-fed Merlin. As the war progressed, so did the 109. The Friedrich, or Bf 109F model, arrived in 1941, considered by many pilots to be the high point of the design. It was more aerodynamic, faster, and had a more potent cannon firing through the propeller hub. Then came the Gustav, the Bf 109G. This was the most produced version, but it was a bit of a mixed bag. To counter newer Allied fighters, it was packed with heavier engines, more armor, and bigger guns. This made it faster, especially at high altitude, but it also made it less agile and much more difficult to handle, particularly during takeoff and landing. Rookie pilots struggled, and accident rates skyrocketed. The final operational versions, the Kurfürst or K models, were refined and powerful, but arrived too late to change the course of the war. With over 34,000 built, the Bf 109 was the most produced fighter aircraft in history, a testament to its effective and adaptable design. But the 109 wasn't alone. In 1941, a new threat appeared over the English Channel that shocked the Allies. It was the Focke-Wulf Febu 190. Nicknamed the Butcherbird by Allied pilots, this machine was a beast. Unlike the liquid-cooled Bf 109, the FW 190 was powered by a massive air-cooled BM radial engine. This made it incredibly tough and able to absorb significant damage. It was faster than the Spitfire MKV, more heavily armed, and its roll rate was phenomenal. It was a master of the hit-and-run attack. The FW 190 was a true multi-role aircraft. The early A models, the Anton, were pure air superiority fighters. They were armed with a devastating combination of cannons and machine guns that could tear apart a bomber in seconds. But as the war shifted, the FW 190 adapted. The F or Friedrich models were developed as dedicated fighter bombers, or Jabos. They were reinforced to carry bombs and rockets, becoming a menace to Allied tanks and ground troops, especially on the Eastern Front. Later, the long-nosed Dora series, the FW 190D, was introduced. It swapped the radial engine for a liquid-cooled inline engine to improve high-altitude performance, specifically to counter the threat of American heavy bombers and their escorts. German pilots loved the Dora for its speed and power, considering it one of the best piston engine fighters of the entire war. Now, let's talk about the future. While the Allies were perfecting their piston engine designs, Germany was leaping into the jet age. The Messerschmitt Me 262 Schwalbe, or Swallow, was the world's first operational jet fighter. When it appeared in the skies over Europe in 1944, it was like something from another planet. It was over 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied fighter. It was armed with 430mm cannons in the nose, a concentration of firepower that could destroy a B-17 Flying Fortress with a single 1-second burst. In the hands of an experienced ace, the 262 was untouchable, but it wasn't a miracle weapon. Jumo 004 jet engines were notoriously unreliable, with a service life of only 10 to 25 hours before needing a complete overhaul or replacement. They were slow to respond to throttle changes, making the aircraft extremely vulnerable during takeoff and landing. Allied pilots quickly learned to patrol over German airfields, waiting to pounce on the Tu-62s when they were at their slowest. While it scored hundreds of kills, production issues, fuel shortages, and constant bombing of factories meant not enough Mi-262s ever reached the front lines to have a strategic impact. It was a glimpse of the future, arriving just too late. If the Me-262 was a complex wonder weapon, the Heinkel He-162 was the exact opposite. Nicknamed the Volksjäger, or People's Fighter, this was a last-ditch effort. Conceived in late 1944, the goal was to create a cheap, mass-produced jet fighter that could be flown by pilots with minimal training. Made primarily of wood and other non-essential materials, it was powered by a single WWII jet engine mounted on top of the fuselage. It was incredibly fast and agile, but also dangerously unstable. The program was rushed, corners were cut, and the resulting aircraft was a death trap for inexperienced pilots. While a few hundred were built, they saw very little combat. The Volksjäger stands as a desperate symbol of Germany's collapsing war effort. Not all of Germany's fighters were single-engine dogfighters. The Messerschmitt Bf 110 Zersterer, or Destroyer, was a twin-engine heavy fighter. The original concept was for a long-range escort fighter that could protect bombers deep in enemy territory. However, during the Battle of Britain, it proved to be a failure in this role. It was simply not agile enough to compete with single-engine fighters like the Spitfire and Hurricane. It suffered heavy losses and had to be escorted by Bf 109s itself. But the 110 found its true calling elsewhere. As the war progressed, it was transformed into a formidable night fighter. Equipped with early forms of airborne radar, like the Liechtenstein set with its distinctive deer antler antennas, the Bf 110 became the scourge of RAF Bomber Command. Crews would patrol the night skies, guided by ground controllers and their own onboard radar to find and shoot down British bombers. Later versions were armed with upward-firing cannons called Schrägmusik, allowing them to approach bombers from below, in their blind spot, and rake their wings and fuel tanks with devastating effect. And while not a dedicated fighter, we can't ignore the Junkers Ju-87, the infamous Stuka. This gull-winged dive bomber, with its terrifying Jericho trumpet sirens, was a symbol of the Blitzkrieg. Its primary role was ground attack, delivering bombs with pinpoint accuracy. However, in the early years of the war, especially on the Eastern Front, it was often used in a fighter-bomber capacity and could hold its own against older, less capable Soviet aircraft. Once superior fighters appeared, the Stuka was hopelessly vulnerable. A version called the Ru-87G Kanonenvogel, or Cannonbird, was even developed. It replaced its bombs with two 37mm cannons under the wings, turning it into a dedicated tank buster, famously flown by ace Hans-Erich Rudel. The Luftwaffe's success wasn't just about the airframes, it was also about their weapons. They pioneered innovations like engine-mounted cannons, which concentrated firepower along the center line of the aircraft, making aiming easier. They also developed air-to-air rockets, like the R-4M, which could be fired in a volley to break up dense bomber formations from a safe distance. The development of advanced cannon rounds, like the Minengeschoss or mine shell, was also a game-changer. These thin-walled shells were packed with explosives and were far more destructive than the solid armor-piercing rounds used by the Allies early in the war. The Germans' biggest technological challenge was undoubtedly the jet engine. They were years ahead of the Allies in jet technology, but mastering it was another story. The early axial flow jet engines were complex and required exotic, high-temperature metals that were in short supply in Germany. The result was engines that were unreliable, prone to flaming out, and had a very short lifespan. This constant struggle with engine technology severely hampered the effectiveness of their jet fighter programs. Tactically, the Luftwaffe was brilliant. They developed the Finger 4 formation, which consisted of 2 pairs of aircraft. This was far more flexible and offered better mutual support and all-around visibility than the rigid 3-plane Vic formation used by the RAF early on. A leader, the Rat, would be covered by his wingmen, allowing him to focus on searching for and engaging the enemy. This tactical doctrine, combined with their excellent aircraft, gave German pilots a distinct advantage in the early years of the war. Of course, the Allies didn't stand still. They developed countermeasures and new technologies to fight back. The introduction of the P-51 Mustang, with its Merlin engine and long range, completely changed the air war over Germany. Mustangs could escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back, engaging and defeating the Luftwaffe's fighters on their own turf. Allied intelligence, improved radar, and sheer industrial might eventually overwhelmed the German war machine. The Luftwaffe's technological edge could not overcome its crippling lack of fuel, experienced pilots, and the overwhelming numbers they faced. From the legendary Bf-109 to the futuristic Me-262, German fighter aircraft of World War II were truly at the cutting edge of aviation technology. They were flown by some of the most skilled and decorated aces in history. While they ultimately couldn't prevent Germany's defeat, their designs influenced fighter development for decades to come. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Luftwaffe fighters, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more aviation history. Let me know in the comments which aircraft you'd like to see covered next. See you in the next one.